Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you. So my name, as you now know, is Tiago Forte, and I am the creator of and the author of Building a Second Brain, and I'd like to share my story with you. My story begins in 2007 when I was a college student in California. Like any young person, I was filled with nothing but hope and optimism and excitement for the future. At the time, I worked in an Apple store in San Diego, and it was here that I began to get a taste of the magic of combining computers with creativity. This is a photo of me at the bottom right on the very first day that the iPhone went on sale. One day, while I was at work, I began to feel a mysterious pain and tension in my throat. After it continued for a few weeks, I began to see doctor after doctor trying to understand what was happening to me. But none of those doctors could give me a diagnosis, even after this continued for years. Finally, one neurologist gave me a solution, a powerful medication that would numb my entire body. But this medication, while it gave me some relief, had a terrible, terrible side effect. It destroyed many of my short-term memories. I remember looking through photos of a recent vacation to Moscow in Russia, and I didn't remember anything. Imagine if you were faced with a choice. Either you could be free of pain, or you could have access to your memories. Which one would you choose? Before I tell you where I ended up, I want to share a lesson that I took away from this experience with you. That lesson, which I was fortunate to learn very young, is that I could not rely on my brain and my body. I couldn't rely on this brain and this body to give me the life and the future that I wanted. The reason that lesson was so valuable is because we live in a completely unprecedented moment in history. The information scarcity that ruled our entire history as humans has suddenly changed to information abundance. To share some numbers with you, the amount of information that we consume every day has increased 5 times since 1986. If you ever feel stressed or anxious, it's because you've had to consume 5 times as much information as when you were a child. This is the equivalent of reading 174 full newspapers every day. It's the equivalent of downloading 34 gigabytes into your brain every single day. This is the environment that your brain and your body evolved to survive in. We are trying to run complex 21st century lives on hardware that is 200,000 years old. You know when your phone or your computer starts to get a couple years old and it gets slow and it freezes and it crashes? Now imagine your hardware, this hardware, that is 200,000 years old. What I'm trying to say is that if you ever feel overwhelmed by information, it's not you, it is your environment. You were not made to take in this much information. And yet, we still have dreams and goals and ambitions for our lives. Aren't there things that you want to create and build and achieve in your life? How do we face this paradox that we want to live rich, fruitful lives in an environment of completely overwhelming information overload? When I started having my condition, I began to read a lot of books and articles and studies. And the answer came to me when I read a research study that was done on monkeys. And what they found is that when a monkey used a tool, its brain would change to include the tool as part of its own body. This was totally amazing. By simply picking up a tool, it actually becomes part of our body and our mind. I know you've experienced this yourself when it comes to your smartphone. Have you ever lost your phone and you feel like, oh my God, where's my phone? Where is it? Or maybe you went to look up something online and you realized you didn't have internet access and it was like, oh my God. These are signs that our technological tools have become part of how our mind works. Think about how many of you have glasses or contact lenses to enhance your vision. And maybe you have a coat to keep you warm. And I wondered, why do we have technology to enhance every part of our body except our brain? Imagine what would be possible if you had a piece of technology to enhance and improve the way your brain works. Imagine if you had a second brain. I spent more than 10 years since this medical condition researching and studying and trying things and eventually writing the book, Building a Second Brain. It's now available around the world and including, as of today, in Taiwan. I want to give you a little taste of what it contains. When I say a second brain, often people think of these futuristic science fiction visions like this one. But this is not what I mean when I say a second brain. Instead, I mean something much more mundane, something much more common, which is note-taking. You already know how to do note-taking. You probably do it all the time since you were a child. So the question I'm trying to answer is, what would it look like to reinvent this ancient, timeless practice of note-taking, but for our modern connected age? We're getting the common practice of note-taking and we're supercharging it with modern technology. I'd like to share 3 of the most important lessons that I've learned about how to build a second brain. The first one is simply take your notes everywhere. When I see most people, they are already consuming and interacting with many different kinds of information. Just think about it. You probably read, you listen to podcasts, you watch videos, you take courses, you read books. These are all the different kinds of information that you're consuming. As you see in this image, all the information is just kind of randomly, chaotically, just floating around and flying around. All we're doing is taking the same information that you're already consuming and we're saving the best parts in one single place. And that place we call your second brain. Imagine if you could reference every interesting quote from a book that you had read in the past, or an interesting idea from a podcast, or an interesting photo from an event that you attended. How could you use those knowledge treasures to live a healthier, happier, more productive life? My second advice is to capture what resonates. I often look over people's shoulders as they take notes, and I notice that they usually take notes of things they already know. But you shouldn't do that, because if you already have it in your first brain, there's no reason to write it down in your second brain. Instead, to decide what you should write in your notes, it should be what surprises you. It is only information that surprises you that you didn't already know. The third piece of advice that I have is the most important. Most people know how to take notes already, but what they don't know is how to organize those notes. And the usual way that they organize those notes is how they learn in school, which is by subject. But organizing your notes and documents by subject doesn't make sense once you leave school. What makes sense once you leave school and enter the professional world is to organize according to your projects and your goals. What are you trying to accomplish in the world, and how can you organize information to support that? Another way of saying this is, instead of organizing ideas by where they come from, organize them by where they're going. I'm going to make this very practical for you. Make one folder for every project or goal that you're working on now. And then when you take a note or create a document, you know exactly where to put those things. I want to share with you what happened to me with my story. After several years of going from doctor to doctor to doctor and not finding any diagnosis or any solution, I decided to take responsibility for my health. I got all of my medical records from the doctor, which was a big, thick stack like you see in the photo. I got all those paper documents and I scanned them and digitized them into my parents' computer. And that was where everything began to change for me. Because once I brought that information into the digital world, I could start to work with it and interact with it in a much more powerful way. I could search that information, I could tag it, I could reorganize it, I could link it together and connect it. And I began to notice different patterns and clues that none of my doctors could see. And what I discovered is that with a small number of lifestyle changes, changes to how I ate, how I slept, how I exercised, I could actually resolve my symptoms. What I realized is that my body was trying to tell me something, and all that I had to do was listen. Now, I want you to think about this kind of situation for your own life. For what problem or challenge that you are facing now is the information already around you? Maybe in this world of information abundance that we live in, it's just waiting for you to bring together and collect and understand the information that is already at your fingertips. If that's true for you, a second brain will be a very powerful companion for you. And I hope my book will help you.
Hello, Tiago. I am Waki, and I am a big fan of you. I read a lot of your newsletters and your blog, so it really helps me a lot. And I have two questions for you, because I know that we always saying that knowledge is power, and a well-organized second brain may increase the power furthermore. And I would like to ask you, how do you measure the contribution of the second brain to your life, specifically in your professional life? Because you've been working with some corporation, you've been working as a consultant, and how does the second brain actually contribute to the professional work of your life?
Yes. Yeah, great to connect with you, Waki. Thank you for your support. We have this expression, knowledge is power, but it's interesting to compare to electricity, because even with electricity, we have something called a battery. It's like, if power doesn't have a place to be stored, to be contained, it just kind of flies and dissipates away in the air. And this is how I think of my second brain. It's like every single time I have a good idea, I'm putting it in there and charging this battery that is my second brain. So as a consultant, you are hired to do your very, very best thinking for your clients. I don't know about you, but I have great difficulty doing my very best thinking every single day. Some days I'm hungry, some days I'm tired, some days I'm stressed, some days my kids kept me up all night. There's many things that get in the way of doing, my very best thinking. But my second brain is like a backup system. When the power in my first brain is low, I can turn to it and access all the amazing ideas I've had for many, many years in the past. And I'll just give one example. One time, I was asked to run a workshop for a group of executives at Toyota Motor Corporation. And I had 48 hours, 2 days. And I thought I was going to go crazy because 2 days was not enough. But I just said, okay, let me only use resources and slides and examples and frameworks that I already have in my notes. And I did the workshop. It was a success. And all the executives told me, Tiago, you were so well prepared. You must have prepared for weeks. And I said, yes, but they didn't know that I only prepared for 2 days. So one last thing I'll say is just, if you are paid to think, if your job is to think, you cannot, trust me, you cannot depend on this biological brain to be perfect every day.
Thank you, Tiago, for answering the first question. And I have a second question, is that many of my readers have also asked me that how much time and energy do you think it takes to maintain or to process the second brain, maybe daily? And how much time do you spend, and in what occasions do you use the second brain? And what do you think, any tips or tools that can help us to reduce the burden?
Yes. So the biggest mistake, I want to tell you the biggest mistake that people make when they begin to build their second brain, which is that they think they're going to create this huge, incredible, sophisticated machine. But that's really not what, if you take that approach, it will take hundreds of hours and you will never finish. The right way to build a second brain is to just start on one or two of your most important current projects. And then to ask, what information and knowledge and research do I need to move this project forward? And then take maybe just 10 or 15 minutes when the project starts to bring all of that information in one place instead of having it spread over 10 different places. So my real answer is, it really is just 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning and then 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the project to save any new knowledge that's been created back. You recycle it back into your second brain. You know, a second brain system, it's not like a house or a car that it needs constant maintenance. You can leave your second brain, you can leave it to the side for weeks, months, and there's no negative impact. It's really just a support system for those moments where you think, oh, yes, maybe you're on a phone call with a client and you can't remember that one fact. In that moment, you can just turn to your software, do a search, find the answer, and that is all the time that you had to spend to use your second brain. I would say you have to experiment with both ways. There's some projects that are too big and you have to break them into pieces, into smaller projects. Often that's the case if you're trying to do something that is too big, too ambitious, and you don't know where to start. But in other situations, you have to do the opposite. You have too many small projects and you have to combine them into one project. Often that's the case with an activity that is easier and familiar, and you can actually do like a big batch of it all at once. By the way, this is why everyone's second brain is unique and different. This is why I can't build a second brain and then just give mine to you. I wish I could, but it depends on your skills, your personality, your situation, your circumstances, your goals, your culture, your language. All these characteristics are why each person has to build their own second brain. So what I would say is, a second brain can be useful because that experimentation, before doing it in your life, you should do it in your software. It's almost like your software is like a little playground where you can try things out and see what works before doing it in your real life. Sometimes in my notes, I will imagine whole new worlds or whole new futures or whole new decisions as a kind of experiment. And then only the best things do I take into the real world. So I don't know if you can see this, but I just put in the chat a link to one of my YouTube videos that gives a summary of 68 different second brain apps. And I know that is too many. So I put a second YouTube video where I explain, basically I guide you in how to pick the right app for your personality and your thinking style. And I'll give you a little preview, which is there are 4 types of note takers. This is what the second video is about, is there's gardeners, architects, librarians, and students. So depending on which of the 4 categories you fall into, I recommend a completely different kind of software. Thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate your enthusiasm. And I would love to hear your stories of how you are building your second brain.
下面就瓦基跟我跟李宏为大家服务，然后我们先请李宏帮我们介绍一下，到底作者在书中提出最核心的 C.O.D.E 是什么意思呢？
大家好，我是李宏。在这本书里面呢，主要提到 C.O.D.E 这C.O.D.E 这4个做法。那我用1分钟的时间快速的做个摘要。C 呢，就是获取资讯。那获取的过程中，我们重点是找有共鸣的资讯。就像老师刚刚讲说，让你 feel surprise 啊，然后 resonance 就是你有惊奇或是共鸣的，才把它记下来。因为那就代表你还不知道。如果我本来知道的话，它已经在我的第一大脑里面了，不一定要花时间记在笔记上。第二个呢是组织，在组织呢，老师有提到这个 PARA 系统。那重点是可操作性，所谓的可操作性，其实就是跟我们的这个 P 代表是 project， 所以如果不知道怎么做笔记，我们的笔记呢，不是要把它记从哪里来，而是要记往哪里去，所以说，这个可操作性就是说，它对完成我的专案有帮助，好，那这是 O 的部分。那再来到 D，D 呢，我们讲的是萃取。好，这个讯息它是很大量的，那我透过比如说标重点，然后画底色，然后慢慢的把这些本来是一段文章变成可能是几个关键字，或者最后是用一句话来描述这个资讯，那就这是一种累进式摘要的方式。然后到最后呢，我们经过了获取、组织、萃取之后，最后还是要来实践，来秀出你的成果。在这个过程中，可能很多人会觉得说，哎呀，我这样标错怎么办？我漏了怎么办？其实在这整个系统里面呢，我们的资讯是没有要删除的。如果你需要其他的资讯，随时都可以用搜寻的方式来找到原始资讯，所以这是不需要担心的。好，那我就简短的帮大家做个摘要到这边。
大家好，我是瓦基。我先跟大家来分享第一个阶段是 capture 获取。我就直接来展示一下我自己的使用的一些 app 跟我的一些流程。好，那基本上 capture 的话，我会讲第一段，那我连后面的也秀给大家稍微看一下，说我自己的话流程是长什么样子。所以在 capture 的部分，我认为有2件事是最重要的。第一个是我们会有很多的资讯来源，那第二个就是我们会对这些资讯来源去标注重点，这个是我们在 capture 阶段最重要做的2件事情。那我分别讲几种不同的资讯来源哦。第一种是我们跟别人实际上的对话，或我们在开会一些实体的活动。那或者说有一些朋友他可能会阅读一些实体的书籍、纸本书，或者是实体的报章杂志。那么在这个时候，你要怎么去标注重点？怎么样去 capture 呢？最简单或最直接大家都会的方法，就是你可能用打字的方式，无论是用手机或者是用电脑输入这个你的文字进去你的电脑或进去手机嘛。那第二种的话，我常用的是叫做 Drafts 的这个 app。那这个 app 的话，它也是可以免费使用。像我经常在这个 app 上面，我就可以用语音转文字的输入方式，可能是边散步啊，或者说我在休闲的时候，可能就是开着这个 app 可以用讲话的方式转成这种文字的资讯进去。好，那所以说这个方式是比较偏向实体的一些资讯，你怎么去记录。那么再来的话，像我自己会常常阅读电子书。电子书的话，像是可能有人听过 Kindle 或者是 Kobo 这类型的电子书。那么有一个另外的软体是标注重点的软体，叫做 Readwise。我会把这些电子书的重点，然后呢，它就可以自动的同步跟汇入到这个 Readwise 的软体里面。我们只要在电子书上面标记任何的重点，它就会自己汇入到这个 Readwise。那么再来的话，我们可能也会听一些 podcast， 像我自己也会听国内国外的 podcast。那么 podcast 的话，我现在都是用一个 app 叫做 Snip snipped 去听。然后呢，这个 app 也是免费的，在你听的时候，你可以对 podcast 去标注重点，然后呢，它这个重点的这个时间点，它就会把这个时间戳记也是自动汇入到 Rewise 里面。如果你在听的 podcast 是英文的版本的话，那英文它还会有自动的那个逐字稿，所以呢，你如果是把它英文的 podcast 摘记重点之后，你汇入到的 Rewise 里面，它就会连英文的那个逐字稿都会有。好，所以说这个 podcast 的话，我是用这个方式去摘录我听到的重点。那么再来的话，我们也会看一些像是网络文章啊、网络影片啊，或者你也会逛一些，例如说社群媒体，像 Twitter、FB 之类的。那么在这个上面标注到的重点，也可以安装一个免费版本的软体，叫做Rewise Reader， 它有一个外挂，可以让我们在浏览器上面把任何我们看到的像是影片啊，或者是文章这些类型的东西，你也可以直接标注重点，然后这些重点也可以自动同步到 Rewise 的这个小 app 里面。所以呢，在这个部分，其实我们可以把刚刚 Tiago 他讲的这个 capture 的动作，可以想象成说，他就是先集中到某一些渠道当中，经由这些渠道，然后呢，再进入到我们中间这个 O 跟 D 的这个第二大脑的处理的这个环节。那么在这个数位笔记工具这边的话，大家可能也有很多种选择，像是 Tiago 他是用那个 Evernote， 那还有常见的像是 Notion、Roam Research、Obsidian。那么我自己在用的是一款叫做 Heptabase 的这种笔记软体。所以在中间的这个笔记软体，就是看大家自己习惯的，你常用的是哪一种软体。然后呢，一般来说，这个 Rewise 这个 app 它就是支援各种最常见的笔记软体，所以你可以很方便的把你任何 capture 到的标注到的重点全部都丢进去这个你的数位笔记软体里面去做处理，然后去做这个组织。好，那么最后一个环节我就不细讲了，就是你要把这些东西 express 表达出来，就是发布成那些内容。所以这整个环节里面的话，我们先来回顾一下这个 capture 的部分。好，这边的话我再来从 capture 再细讲一点点。像是我们在读电子书嘛，然后如果说你在电子书上面有标注一些重点的时候，好，这些重点我们都会希望说它可以很自动化的可以同步到我们的数位笔记工具里面，可以很快速的去处理。所以像如果我们去使用例如说 Rewise 这种工具的话，它就可以透过同步的功能帮你把你的电子书的账号可以同步进来，然后呢它又可以很瞬间的又把这个同步的资讯再汇入到你使用的数位笔记工具里面，所以你就可以在你的数位笔记工具里面，你就可以很快速的去搜寻到这一些你已经标注过的重点，然后你读的是哪一本书，你标的是哪一个段落，文字是什么，它就很自动的帮你全部都集成起来。所以呢，无论是我们是透过电子书啊，或是你读的任何网络资讯，你看的影片，你听的一些东西，甚至是你可能是在其他地方，例如说社群媒体看到的东西，都可以透过 Rewise 去把它集中起来。所以目前我在市面上看的各种工具里面，我认为对于 Capture 这个功能来说， Rewise 算是帮了我很大的一个忙。好，举一个例子来说，这边好了，像是 Rewise 里面它的这个我们可以把它当成是一个图书馆的这个位置，就等于是它帮你收集了所有的重点标注。那么这边的话，你就可以看到这些分类包含了书籍，好，包含了一些像是文章还有影片，它都会收集到文章这个类别里面。那或者像是 podcast 也会被收集到这个页面里面，所以这些东西它就可以再自动的又同步到你使用的这种数位工具、数位笔记工具里面，所以它就等于是很无缝的或很轻松的，让你可以随时随地你就是吸收你要的资讯，吸收的时候你就很简单的标注跟做这个重点，然后呢，它就可以把你这些重点自动的再丢到数位笔记工具里面来做后面的 O.D.E 后面的3个步骤。好，如果说大家对这个有兴趣的话，我之前有跟Rewise 有特别要到一个邀请码，如果有兴趣的朋友也可以使用这个邀请码。它一开始的话免费试用是30天啊，那我特别要到这个邀请码是可以让大家免费试用60天，所以你可以透过这个网址，然后呢后面打 Waki 就可以得到这个免费试用60天的这个服务这样。那这个部分跟大家分享一下萃取的这个用法，或者说我的一些心法是怎么样，主要就是说我们怎么样去存精保存下来一些知识，然后还要增加笔记在未来的可以发现性， 好，让我们未来比较好去搜寻或找到这个笔记。好，那么我们回顾一下刚刚，像我们说已经把资讯 capture 下来，也做好了一个很简单的组织，可能你用 para 的方式进行好了分类之后呢，那接下来我们要怎么做呢？好，我就举一个比较直接的例子，像是我最有经验或我每天都在做的事情，就是我会阅读一些纸本书或电子书，然后呢把这些重点然后摘录下来，甚至是有一些东西可能是可以让我自己去使用的，我可能从书里面得到了一些方法，可以用来采取行动，用来做我的专案。所以呢，我自己的做法是这样子针对任何一个资讯来源，例如说是某一本书的书名，我会把这个书名里面，就是我先开成一个这个书名的笔记名称，就叫做书名，然后底下就把一些相关的资讯打在底下。然后再来的话，因为我们已经有透过例如说 Revise 这种工具，然后呢帮我把资讯，帮我把这些重点标注都已经汇入到数位笔记里面了，所以我就可以很快速的在我的数位笔记里面把这一些资讯先复制到我的这则笔记里面去。好，那复制进去之后呢，我们再来第二个步骤，就是我中间的这个蓝色字，用我们自己的看法跟意见去写上去。好，例如说我们标注了一个重点，然后呢我们针对这个重点有什么样的看法或意见，我们可以先写上去。好，这边呢我们写的诀窍其实就是为什么你会想要记这个重点，这个重点你觉得让你很惊喜的地方是什么，或者说你这个重点以后可以用在哪些地方，我们就用这些字，蓝色的字就把它标注在下面。好，那个颜色我只是跟大家做示意，所以说如果你自己在做笔记的话，你不一定要标颜色。好，那当我们把自己的这一些看法跟意见写上去之后呢，我还会在这边再做一个额外的提问，就是我会问自己一些问题。好，因为我们要对于这个东西要萃取的话，我认为透过问答的方式是最直接有效的。好，那这些问答的方式，其实我觉得有一个方式是说，例如我们在看一本书的时候，我们要怎么样可以把这本书的内容内化成自己的东西，甚至可以分享出来呢？有一个很简单的方法，就是你可以想象你要跟你的亲友，你身边的好朋友去分享这本书的话，你会回答哪些问题？所以我大部分我都会试着去回答这3个问题。第一个是我为什么会想要读这本书？好，你也可以想象成说，我为什么想要读这篇文章？我为什么想要听这个 podcast？ 好，是为什么？我们带着什么样的问题？我们想要解决什么困扰？我们是有什么样的好奇心？我为什么想要读这个书？想要吸收这个资讯？我们把这个回答先写下来。好，第二件事情呢，我们也可以去写下来的是，如果用一句话或用一个重点来说明这本书的话，你会用哪一句话去总结它？好，这个同样也可以套用在你读的文章、你看的影片、你听的 podcast。如果只能用一句话去说它的话，你会用什么话去说？那最后一个问题我会回答的是，我会推荐这本书给谁？或者是我会推荐这篇文章，我会推荐这个影片给谁？它可能对谁会有帮助？对什么样情境的人会有帮助？我会把这些问题都给他回答下来。那举个例子来说好了，前一阵子这个元宇宙很夯嘛，所以当我们在阅读这个相关的资讯的时候，像我读完这本书的时候，我就会去回答一下，我为什么想要读元宇宙这种书。好，是因为刚好那个时间点是因为脸书改名成 Meta， 我就很好奇说，为什么这么大的公司它要改名一个这个 Meta， 有点就是元宇宙这个公司的名称，我就很好奇它背后到底是有什么商机，为什么它想要做这件事情。那我们也可以试着用一句话去说明我们吸收到的东西。好，那我就会说，元宇宙这本书它未来呢会这个变革可能会渗透到我们生活每个角落，那会对我们未来生活造成一些影响。那最后的话我就会说，那这本书我会推荐给谁？所以我就会推荐，例如说这本书它写着比较浅显易懂比较白话文，我就会推荐给对元宇宙还很陌生的人。好，所以说我就会用这些东西来这些回答，然后来萃取出这本书对我来说有帮助的地方，我为什么想读它，以及我认为它可以推荐给谁。好，那所以说呢，我们在这边也可以仔细思考一件事情，其实我们每个人有不同的角色、不同的工作、不同的生活情境，我们萃取之后这个资讯的去处跟它的用途其实都不一样。好，这边举3个例子。第一个例子是，假设你自己是一个软体程式设计师的话，你可能比较在乎的事情是软体沟通界面的一些设计考量，所以你在读完这种书之后，你可能会比较在意的是 未来我在设计这个软体界面的时候，需不需要去考量到元宇宙的一些元素。那如果说你是一个在做行销企划的专员的话，你比较在乎的事情应该会比较偏向于说像是科技产品的一些新的卖点啊，跟它新的商机，所以你的元宇宙的这个笔记最后萃取之后，它会比较偏向于去到这个地方是你未来可以用到的。那如果你是一个教师啊，你是讲师，你平常会跟人家分享一些新的资讯的话，那可能你比较在乎的会是数位科技带给我们的一些启发，或者说你对于数位科技的一些趋势观察，所以你自己的这个最后萃取出来的笔记，你的去处也会不太一样。好，所以这边就总结一下，跟刚刚 Tiago 他有分享的一个观念是非常雷同的，就是说我们要收纳这些笔记呢，或者说你萃取完的笔记是要把它放到你未来会用到的地方，好，而不是其他人都放在什么地方。就是其他人放什么分类，放什么主题，其实跟你一点关系都没有，你可以参考，可是你不太需要去复制，或者说其他人怎么做的我就怎么做。我们需要做的是未来以你的身份、你的角色、以你的职位、你的生活，你在乎的是什么，你正在执行的专案或你正在进行的事情是什么，你把它放到这个未来你会用到的地方。好，那以上这只是几个简单的举例，如果我们每个人有不同的情境，我们都会有不同的用法。那最后再分享一个小小的一个重点，就是说笔记的这个可发现性。好，在未来的话，你怎么样更好的发现它？像是有读者就会问我说，他们写了很多笔记啊，未来都找不到，每次要找关键字，然后都找不到那个关键字，然后要搜寻好几种不同的关键字才可以。举个例子来说好了，像有一些读者他们会去认识自己嘛，为了要认识自己，他可能就会写了很多种笔记，这个标题就会像是说认识笔记，然后自我认识、探索自我、自我了解。好，那你如果说你自己写笔记的时候也有遇到这种问题的话，你该怎么做呢？我是这样想的因为可发现性的意思就是说，我们未来能不能够很轻松的找到跟取用这一些笔记。好，那重点就在于什么？笔记的关键字的选择，我们在写它的时候要符合自己未来会回想得起来的一个思考方式。所以以我自己为例好了，像是这4种关键字，以我自己来讲，我会选择都用认识自己这4个字，无论是类似的主题还是什么的，我会尽量在这个标题这边使用认识自己这4个字。为什么呢？因为以后我在回想的时候，我很少会去回想到后面3个关键字，那些关键字对我来说比较不好回想，或者说我认为它比较艰深一点点。我认为最好懂的，我自己最容易回想的叫做认识自己。所以当我们在写笔记的时候，你要想到你未来的去处，你未来的用途，你要去思考到的是你自己会怎么去思考这些关键字。如果你闭上眼睛，你会怎么样去呼叫这些关键字？你会怎么搜寻？就用这些笔记的关键字去写你的笔记标题，或者是你的笔记内容。好，所以这边就提醒大家的重点是说，在萃取完之后，你对于笔记关键字的选择是要符合自己回想的方式。所以你在以后每一次的回想，你在引用，你在撰写，在调用这些笔记的时候，其实就是练习自己对于这些关键字的嗅觉。那这些关键字的一致性只要是越高，未来你就会越容易去取用，它会越容易内化成你自己的知识体系。所以这个是我在萃取这一些笔记的时候，我对于这些命名啊，对于这些选关键字的时候，我的一些背后的心法分享给大家参考看看，这样子。
好，我们先请李宏老师帮我们来谈谈他1分钟他觉得最关键要点是什么。
我简短的讲，我在上课的时候我也问过 Tiago 本人，就是说搬移资料怎么搬。当时 Tiago 他是反问我说，你如果写一本笔记本写完换新笔记本，难道你会把所有笔记都抄过去吗？我想想，所以他认为把旧的笔记软体呢，直接当成一个 archive， 直接当成一个封存，不失为一个可用的方式。好，那我们把时间给瓦基老师。
好，我觉得我使用第2大脑最关键的是说，它可以帮我把很多资讯放在一个数位的空间。那这个数位的空间，它好搜寻、好储存，而且很好的去重复排列组合应用。所以我觉得最关键的要点是把它当成一个，我会把它当成一个外部的笔记本，那只是这个笔记本的样子是数位的样子，所以我自己会把它当成是一个数位的笔记本去记录、去储存我所吸收到的任何资讯， 那让我以后很好的快速的去回顾，然后去找它出来使用这样。